Hi, welcome to How I Became a Theosophist. This person next to me needs no introduction, but I'm going to do it anyways. One of my favorite Theosophists, always led by example. Very happy to have Betty Bland here. Betty, thank you so much for being here.
It's nice to be here.
I just want to say, just start to say out that when Betty was here, one thing I really always admired about her is that whenever a new person came in, it doesn't matter who the person was, there didn't have to be any context. She always made it a point to go up to the person and give them the warmest welcome you've ever seen. And I never saw any exception to this, and I just always thought, okay, that's theosophy. So, anyways, um, uh, how did you come to theosophy?
Okay. Um, well, I'll make a long story a short story because, of course, near death experience was what brought me to theosophy. But after I had had my near death experience, it was like everything in my head was scrambled and my whole sense of life was scrambled. So I was exploring, and I did talk to my parents about it, and my husband, of course. And they said my father, who had never told me before that he was interested in theosophy, had some theosophical books.
Wow.
And that I guess he was a closet theosophist.
Yes.
And so after I told him about this profound experience I've had, he said, "Well, I've got a book you ought to read." And had a long convalescence, and so I had the opportunity to read, and I read this one book, Gina Sermonara's Many Mansions, which is about Edgar Casey. But she was also a theosophist, and it basically has the whole theosophical construct worldview in that book, or at least I read between the lines and found the construct. I don't know if it was really there or not.
Right.
But reading that book just is like I didn't even know what the word was, and then I turned a switch, and I was a theosophist.
So yeah, and so to restate the obvious, it seems like this near-death experience was sort of a switch, yeah. And did you have a spiritual practice before that?
None. I was absolutely, I like to say I was comatose before then because I did not, just didn't take life seriously.
Yeah,
I
and
lived just sort of a little maybe airy-fairy.
and then after the experience, you definitely decided I'm going to live life with a purpose, but then you had to find a way to do that.
Yeah, I had to understand what had happened
Yeah,
because it totally changed my worldview. All of a sudden, reality was an internal reality and not this external that I had lived lightly in before.
yeah,
And with then I started reading a lot of theosophical books, and I followed some of Gina Sermonara's additional books, but they weren't on the particular track that I already was looking for, and so I started reading books that were published by the Theosophical Society, and I found out they have an organization. And so I wrote and asked for information, and I was blessed in having Virginia Hanson as my responder.
wow.
And I always treasured that because I could ask the most inane questions, and she would she would write back with such kind and full answers, and she never told me
Yeah.
never told me what I was supposed to think, but rather said, "This is the wide range of possibility, and here are some books you can read that you can explore this for yourself." So it wasn't restrictive, but it was open ended.
And it sounds like you kind of dove into it, I mean, completely. like you went to conference after conference after conference and book after book, kind of, right?
Absolutely. And I lived way out in the sticks in North Carolina, and so there was no access to theosophical information except the library, which I could get books by mail.
Yeah.
So it was a gift. It was like the library was in my mailbox.
Were there any sort of books that you especially treasure?
Well, along the way, I think I have grown through things. Leadbeater and Besant were very important to me early on, because I had had some major internal experiences that are psychic experiences that I needed to understand and put in context with life. And Leadbeater gives things, he makes them very concrete, and if you take it literally, you're off path. But if you take his descriptions as a way of describing something and then apply it to what you've experienced, it's really was very foundational for me.
Wow, that's very impressive about those writings. Huh? Yeah. So,
and at the
please.
feet of the master.
Yeah.
That I encountered that early on, and that is so good at establishing a spiritually based ethic.
Okay. Yeah.
And so I used that the first. I didn't know what meditation was, but they would refer to meditation, so I would sit quietly.
Sure. Yeah.
And I used that at the feet of the master, just little phrases, and as a seed thought, and I'd work my way through it, and then when I finished, I'd go back and start over again.
Yeah.
And that may be part of why I am always known and am interested in the practical aspects of Theosophy, how it just imbues your life and your attitude towards life. And that was a part of it, is I was always meditating and seeing how to apply that in my daily living.
You just kind of answered my question, my next question, which was, what does Theosophy mean to you? Because I know from watching you the few years I was here when you were here, that sort of living this essential brotherhood was a big part of it, regardless of circumstance. Now, probably there's a lot of people like me who have 1,000 questions about your near-death experience. Because that's not an everyday thing. And just for the record, Betty did give a great lecture on it. We do have a lecture in the library that you can check out, and I have listened to it a couple times. We don't have to talk about it too much here, but can I just ask, do you still reflect on that experience?
Yes, I do. It's one thing to theoretically understand some of the ideas, and it's another to absolutely know it in your inner gut or soul, and particularly the personality. I mean, I know I'm stuck in my personality, and the ego can go here, there, and whatever. But in reality, at the back of my mind, I always am aware that this is not the reality. This physical world is not the reality. That the real reality, we're working it out, but it's the real reality is in the interior planes, and that's the bottom line. So it's hard to explain, but then it's like it turns life upside down, and even the traumas and the whatever, they are things to work through that apply to your whole life.
I don't know, you keep doing this. I think you basically answered my next question.
I'm picking sneaking up on you, maybe.
So I was going to ask, what is the key to spiritual growth? And you sort of just answered it. Anything else that you would recommend or help? I want people to maybe just consider when people come in here a lot of times and they say, I want to work on a spiritual path, but I have no idea where to start.
Well, of course, it was not many people have the opportunity to just, fall in a hole, have a near-death experience, and then come out and be wide-eyed and in the whole thing. But I think to really practice connecting with the interior of one's being,
Okay.
and if you really connect with that, you know that you are one with everything, and that, but for the grace of God, I was born anywhere and am anywhere, so this just happens to be my particular little place I've got to work through. And if you can hold life a little lighter, like the 100-year rule is always good. To when you're working through something, you think, well, how important is this going to be 100 years from now? And all of a sudden, things sort of fall into place.
Wow, that's nice.
So that, and if you recognize that you are, your spirit is the same as my spirit, and you referred to my connecting with people.
Yeah.
I just feel a real affinity for people.
Yeah.
And I recognize the same interior workings in myself that are going on in you, and I think that kind of empathy, you can't help but recognize universal brotherhood.
Let's say there's a person new to Theosophy, and let's say they're even kind of new to reading about spirituality. What author or authors would you recommend they go with to start with for Theosophy?
Well, I used to have a harder time recommending a book, but I think Ed Abdul's book, The Secret Gateway, is so well done, and I hear echoes of Dora's voice through Ed speaking. Things he says, he was very influenced by Dora Kuntz, and I, of course, was greatly privileged to know her. I first met her in 1977.
She had a way of speaking her mind, I heard.
There are more Dora stories than there are people who've encountered her. But she did not tolerate fools easily, and she also had no sense of other people's ego, although she had grown up being rather spoiled. But she would cut to the chase in a very practical way, and if you listen to her, you learned a lot.
Yeah, I believe it. So, final question. We're in a very interesting time right now, it seems like, worldwide. Many things seem to be in flux. What would be, if you could paint a perfect scenario or even a perfect goal for the Theosophical Society, Adjar in America, say for the next 10 or 20 years, what would you like to see us try to accomplish?
Well, we are working towards what I would like to see us accomplish. Our web presence is phenomenal. There's nobody anywhere that is without access anymore to this information. And our resources, they can go as deep as they want to with our resources, with our online resources. And that, though, has to influence people in a way where they really recognize the spiritual depths of life rather than the external personality conflicts, and particularly because religion is such a divisive thing. Even in this country, the fundamentalism is extremely divisive.
Yeah.
And to be able to open people's understanding up to appreciate all religious approaches, faith traditions, in a way that everybody can deepen their own faith, but not have to impose it on somebody else.
Yeah.
I absolutely agree, and who am I to disagree with the Mahatmas when they say there is no personal God, but they meant it in terms of the Santa Claus in the sky. But as far as being a universal power that we can't even fathom, that is there, I think it's harmful for people to feel cut off from that.
Yeah.
That's undefinable through various layers of manifestation finally manifests through us and through our higher self is accessible to us. And if we don't rely on that interior connection, if we cut off all sense of a godness, we go back to the time of being a mechanical universe that you just wound up. And that it's clicking away and you're cut off from that.
Right.
So I think it's very important to recognize that interior spiritual connection, however one does, and the universal application of that is the golden rule.
Right, so we've got this big challenge of religions, but we also have this big gift of religions. Right. And what's the Annie Besant quote? Theosophy doesn't ask you to leave your home religion, but to live it.
To live it.
Yeah. We can try. So I just want to thank you. It's really an honor to have you here, and I hope you are going to keep teaching, and however that manifests for you. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. It's been fun.